He was engaged to another woman until Serena made him choose war. Kyle's father had arranged his marriage to the daughter of a powerful European crime family. A deal meant to protect empires and prevent bloodshed. Since Serena called him a coward, survived his world, and became the only woman he wanted. Breaking the engagement meant betraying an alliance, humiliating a Dawn, and painting a target on her back. Kyle knew all of that and chose her anyway. Picture the opening shot, guys. The camera pans down from a blinding chandelier to Serena Vale, who has zero clue a psychological trap just snapped shut on her. She literally just roasted the heir to a brutal criminal syndicate. A normal thug would pull a weapon, but Kyle Moretti has the terrifying restraint of a true megalomaniac. He just watches her, smiling. Let us pause right here, because you and I need to unpack this disaster together. In exactly 3 weeks, she will wake up in his dark sheets, totally consumed by her captor. The life lesson here is wild but true. The human mind will normalize a literal monster if it means surviving until tomorrow. This fancy hotel was never a party. It was always a hunting ground. The harsh lighting blasts the ugly truth about dirty money wide open. Being around insane wealth completely rots your sense of reality. For 6 months, Serena twisted her moral compass, watching guys in tailored suits go on manic binges, while politicians hid their cruelty behind fake smiles. Tonight was supposed to be a breather. She thought she was dealing with clean money. But the brutal reality is no crime family is ever clean. She stands by the grand entrance, gripping a tablet like a bulletproof vest against these elites. Wearing her stark black uniform, she silently begs the universe to let her vanish. But here is a bitter life lesson we all learn too late. The people who try the hardest to stay invisible are exactly the ones a top-tier predator spots first. The camera tightens on her face. She is playing dead, hoping the danger walks past her. Serena believes keeping her head down will keep her safe as she dodges elites toward a champagne tower. Then the focus snaps to Kyle Moretti. He sits flanked by bodyguards radiating pure violence, but Kyle is the absolute black hole of the room. He has that heavy magnetic pull of a supreme narcissist, sucking the oxygen right out of the air. His pale eyes scan the floor like a starving wolf, hunting a wounded deer. Serena read his file, but reading ink on paper is nothing like feeling the freezing draft of his actual presence. The biological life lesson here is terrifyingly simple but totally true. Your nervous system always recognizes the big, bad wolf way before your brain even catches up. Watch his posture shift. Boredom surfaces right before the cruelty kicks in. Kyle, this untouchable mob prince, is numb to the noise around him. Serena hears his bodyguards and instantly recognizes that harsh Sicilian dialect from her own childhood neighborhood. Then his cold voice cuts through the string quartet. He openly mocks her in his native language, calling her a little girl playing dress-up, assuming she is a clueless servant. That sheer arrogance shatters her perfectly practiced mask. Guys like him use casual humiliation like a sonar ping, bouncing insults off you to map your emotional weak spots. The life lesson here is rough but true. Swallowing a toxic insult might keep you breathing today, but it will slowly chip away at your soul until nothing is left. The background noise drops to silence. The worst mistake you can make with a god complex is puncturing the ego. Instead of walking away, Serena steps into the blast radius. His bodyguards instantly reach inside their jackets. Serena does not flinch. She locks onto his pale eyes and fires back in flawless Sicilian, roasting him for hiding behind the ghost of his dead father. The room holds its breath. The guards wait for the nod to end her, but Kyle barely lifts a finger, freezing his muscle in place. He just sits there and studies her. Here is a counterintuitive life lesson we often forget. Showing fearlessness to a monster does not scare them away. It just upgrades you from a random passing victim to a full-blown obsession. And then, the psycho actually smiles. Zoom in on that smile. It is totally devoid of human warmth. It is the cold spark of a predator finding a new toy. Switching back to perfect English, Kyle admits she impressed him. Serena stays defensive, telling him to find a better hobby than tormenting hotel staff. A guard mutters a lethal threat, but Kyle ignores him. His tunnel vision is locked entirely on her. He demands her name. This is the absolute tragic turning point. She should have lied. Just invent a fake name, snap that fragile thread, and run. But she hands him the truth instead. Serena Vale. You and I both know the core life lesson for surviving this dark underworld. Never give a top-tier hunter your real coordinates. By handing over her true name, she just locked the door to her own steel cage. The spell shatters the second her manager yells her name. Serena blinks and drops her gaze. Make no mistake, dropping eye contact is a physical surrender. Kyle lets her walk away, but his invisible brand is already burning into her skin. For the rest of her shift, he does nothing crazy. He does not yell or grab her. He just watches from the shadows. It is a suffocating psychological pressure designed to flood her veins with panic. He wants her exhausted. He wants the terror of being hunted to totally strip away her rational thinking. It makes her furious, yet her heart races in a twisted rhythm. It is a tragic life lesson, but totally undeniable. The human brain is genuinely terrible at telling the difference between the panic of being hunted and the adrenaline rush of dark desire. Her shift finally ends. The camera follows Serena, stepping out into an echoing concrete parking garage. The lighting is that sickly, flickering yellow. Guys, we all know this exact scene. This is where the horror truly drops. Heavy footsteps echo off the walls behind her, and her brain slams into primal survival mode. She weaves her car keys between her fingers, as if a sliver of metal will stop a ruthless crime syndicate. She speeds up. The shadow behind her matches her pace perfectly. A rough voice calls her name. The bitter psychological life lesson here is hard to swallow. Society trains us to politely ignore our screaming gut instincts, so we do not look crazy in public. But choosing politeness over panic is exactly how the innocent gets swallowed by the dark underworld. Her eyes dart to the unnatural bulge under his dark jacket. This is how bosses like Kyle operate. They never bloody their own hands. They delegate the terror. The massive guard casually mentions that Mr. Moretti wants to see her. In one breath, all her brave little boundaries are smashed into dust. The guy makes it crystal clear that running is useless. Kyle is fixated, and his empire ensures he gets what he wants. She realizes her weekend self-defense classes mean nothing against a ruthless private army. The real-life lesson here is chilling to the bone. Captivity does not begin when they slide the heavy deadbolt locked. Captivity begins the very second you realize your freedom was only ever a fragile illusion. She lets out a broken, hysterical laugh and just stops fighting. Hold the frame right here. Stick with me, guys, because we need to look at this moment together. It is 2 a.m. in a freezing concrete tomb of a garage. This human brick wall is telling her to get into a car with a known Mafia boss. Every cell in her body is screaming to sprint toward the streetlights. But a twisted curiosity hooks her. She remembers his pale, crazy eyes. He looked at her like a broken puzzle he wanted to crack open. Guys like him do not feel love. They only understand toxic possession. And heaven help her, she actually wants to know why he chose her. The ultimate life lesson here is vital. Never mistake the terrifying gravity of the dark abyss for a safe place to land. She whispers that she will give him 5 minutes and slowly walks toward the pitch-black sedan. The tinted window glides down, and Kyle casually tells her to get inside. Serena tries to hold a pathetic line of defense, insisting they talk right there on the concrete. Watch his face. It is pure, arrogant amusement. He complains about the wind and drops her first name, injecting a fake intimacy to tear down her last wall. So, against all logic, she gets in. The armored doors thud shut with the absolute sound of a steel vault locking forever. The giant guard slides into the driver's seat. She is completely boxed in. Before she can even take a breath, the engine roars and the car rips away from the curb, diving deep into the city night. A critical life lesson to remember, holding on to tiny illusions of safety, like those car keys biting into your knuckles, is never going to save you from a real monster. The streetlights cast rhythmic shadows across his face. She demands to know what he wants. He slowly turns to her, his features locked in the terrifying symmetry of a true psychopath. He ignores her panic, softly asking where she learned to speak Sicilian. That knocks her totally off balance. She stammers that an old neighbor taught her the words. When he asks if the neighbor taught her that insult too, she confesses she made that part up. The energy shift in the car is palpable. He is absolutely fascinated by her reckless nerve, a profound life lesson we rarely discuss. Standing up to toxic power is romanticized in movies, but in real life, sometimes it just makes you the most entertaining prey in the room. He lets out a real dark laugh. The steel trap is closed. The tragedy has begun. Look at this, guys. We are stuck inside this speeding black sedan, the yellow streetlights making the vibe feel totally suffocating. You can literally feel the oxygen leaving the chat. Kyle finally breaks the silence, laying out the trap she just walked into. She tries to play it tough, but her shaking hands give her away. He brushes her panic off, studying her like a predator, sizing up dinner. The second she admits she is terrified, his toxic obsession officially kicks into high gear. He leans in, whispering that even hardened Mafia enforcers cannot hold his stare. Here is a free life lesson for you. When a ruthless person compliments your strength, they are not being nice. They are measuring exactly how much force it will take to completely shatter you. The silence in the car gets totally heavy, like that dead quiet before a massive storm. She clings to her last shred of control, demanding he let her out. Kyle hits back with this terrifying calm, casually reminding her he has not even made an offer yet. Out of nowhere, the tires scream against the asphalt. The car stops right in front of her house. Mind you, she never gave this guy her address. You can see the exact second her reality shatters. She stumbles out onto the cold pavement on shaking legs, begging to be left alone. The hard lesson we all need to take away from this is crystal clear. You cannot negotiate with someone who sees you as a literal piece of property. They do not do compromises. They only orchestrate your total ruin. He leaves her with a vow that chills the blood, swearing he will not cross a single line until she actually begs him to. His toxic certainty is easily the scariest part. She tries to write him off as crazy, but the fear is already planted. As his taillights vanish, she endures a brutally sleepless night, staring at shadows that feel like hitmen closing in. At sunrise, her exhausted brain tries to pretend it was just a bad dream. Then she opens her front door. A massive arrangement of dark red roses sits there like a literal tombstone, marking the start of a psychological siege. This brings up a painful life truth we all need to hear. Extravagant gestures from a total stranger are not romance. They are a weapon used to test your fences and tear down your safety. There is no card in those flowers, and that is no mistake. It is a deliberate boss move to make his presence fill her room. She drags the heavy arrangement inside, weighed down by absolute dread. Suddenly, her phone lights up. A text drops from an unknown number, mentioning the exact clothes she is wearing right now. He is literally outside watching her. She blocks the number, but that is useless against a guy who treats boundaries like a starting pistol. The crazy deliveries multiply, masking a psychological takeover as old-school courtship. Her clueless roommate thinks it is romantic, missing the terror entirely. We have to learn this lesson early on. Someone who steps over your clearly drawn lines is not in love with you. They are just proving they have power over you. She hides her panic from her roommate. Honestly, it is a beautifully tragic misstep. Isolation is the exact oxygen a captor needs to start a fire. 2 weeks go by, and the pressure builds. A vintage copy of Sicilian poetry shows up. The note is pure arrogance, claiming she is just pretending not to be obsessed with him. She holds out for 3 brutal days before finally caving. We catch her awake at 2 a.m, reading verses he specifically picked to manufacture a fake soulmate connection. Next comes a rare book she only mentioned in passing years ago. It is an absolute surgical hit to her sanity. Here is the life lesson we simply cannot ignore. Locking your deepest fears alone in the dark only gives your personal demons a quiet, safe place to grow teeth. The absolute second she realizes this mafia boss was digging through her history, she completely loses it. We are talking pure, unhinged rage, zero logic. She marches straight into his ultra-exclusive restaurant, like she owns the place, demanding to see him. You and I need to pause right here, because a predator like this Don never leaves things to chance. Suddenly, this brick wall of an enforcer steps out of the shadows. He is soft-spoken, but his vibe screams critical damage. He escorts her past all the clueless rich VIPs. She actually thinks she is giving main character energy, completely blind to the fact she is willingly locking herself in his cage. Real talk, guys. Here is the life lesson. If you let pure anger take the wheel, you will just drive straight into the trap your enemy built for you. The camera follows her past stolen masterpieces into a heavily guarded back room. 6 absolute units sit around a huge table. But the second she steps in, the vibe goes freezing cold. Kyle is chilling at the head of the table, swirling red wine like a total supervillain. Without breaking eye contact, he orders his muscle out. An older mobster tries to push back, but Kyle drops this heavy aura that shuts him down instantly. The squad rolls out, and the door locks behind them. Then, he flashes this toxic smirk and whispers that he never thought she would hand-deliver herself to his front door. Listen up. The lesson here is simple. We all think we are smart enough to outplay the bad guy, but standing that close to the fire will burn you before you even realize you are catching heat. She stands there frozen, hands vibrating, while she demands he stop sending those creepy gifts. Kyle just stares straight through her soul. His response is a cold, hard no. She yells about his sick mind games, totally missing the fact that this guy treats regular people like disposable trash. He stands up with this terrifying smoothness and casually admits he has been stalking her every move. He invades her space, using his insane boss energy to short-circuit her brain. Her survival instincts are screaming at her to run, but it is paralyzed. She begs him to stop, but he spins his obsession into a dark romantic destiny. The life lesson is brutal, guys. Real danger does not drag you away kicking and screaming. It messes with your head so badly that you walk inside and lock the door yourself. She builds up a wall of denial, swearing she feels absolutely zero for him. But Kyle speedruns through her mental defenses, dismantling her reality. He talks about sending that armed mafia hitman like it was a casual text, totally normalizing his insane, violent lifestyle. Then he promises she is perfectly safe with him. It is top-tier psychological manipulation, making her seek shelter from the exact monster hunting her. When she finally asks what he wants, he drops a massive lore bomb about his dark obsession, trapping her mind. He even blames her for speaking his native language when they first met, making his madness her fault. It is a bitter life lesson. The exact second you agree to play games with a toxic person, you paint a glowing target on your own back for them to hit. She desperately tries to find an escape route, but he refuses to give her an inch of breathing room. He leans in and whispers that she made herself visible, wrapping a massive threat inside a sad confession. The dude openly admits he is straight up cruel, using fake honesty to bypass her mental firewalls. Just by standing near the Don, she is now a walking target for rival gangs. You and I can see this trap snapping shut in real time. He makes himself the ultimate threat and her only armor. When she begs him to stop the flowers, it is a hard no. As she finally bolts, he yells that she knows where his base is when she stops lying to herself. The life lesson here is mandatory. When a destructive person shows you their true colors, believe them immediately. There is no love in a predator's eyes. Let us look at this closely, guys. 3 days drag by in dead silence. Just enough time for the paranoia to bake in before all hell breaks loose. Serena walks through a freezing parking garage when 2 massive dudes step out from behind a pillar. Pure panic hits her chest. She grips her car keys, ready to fight. Then the tall guy smirks and quietly drops Kyle's name. Boom. Her stomach drops. That crazy warning he gave her is actually coming true. She fights back like a cornered wildcat, clocks one guy in the jaw, and bolts. but she barely makes it 10 feet before a heavy hand grabs her coat, her screams bouncing off the concrete. It brings us to a harsh life lesson. A truly toxic person will happily let the wolves chase you, just so they can kick the door down later and play your absolute hero. A rough hand clamps over her mouth just as the garage lights completely black out. Slow, heavy footsteps start echoing in the pitch black. What goes down next is an absolute masterclass in ruthless violence. A sickening crash, a wet thud, and a grown man screaming in the dark. When the lights buzz back to life, Kyle is standing there looking like the literal Grim Reaper. One thug is knocked out cold. The other is on his knees with Kyle's weapon to his skull. Kyle zeroes in on her ripped coat. And the wildest part? Her exhausted brain actually looks at this bloodbath and mistakes it for total safety. Here is a dark life lesson. When the devil himself steps up to save your life, that bill never vanishes. It just quietly collects interest. The tension here is suffocating. Serena stands frozen as Kyle flips a terrifying emotional switch. In a split second, his face goes from unhinged rage to an empty, chilling calm. He jams his weapon into the guy's skull, gets the name Salvatore Viscari, and casually watches his goons drag the body into the dark. Dead silence floods the garage. Then Kyle turns to Serena, moving like a predator cornering a deer. She begs him to let her go home, but his dark obsession takes the wheel. He strips away her choices, claiming her apartment is compromised and pulling her into his twisted web. It brings us to a real-life lesson. We think hiding behind someone strong will keep us safe, but true security never comes from handing your freedom over to a man who feeds on absolute control. Stick with me here and let us look at this together. The pale light catches Kyle's busted knuckles as he holds out his hand. Every survival instinct in Serena's body is screaming at her to run, but bone-deep exhaustion completely hijacks her brain. In a tragic sign of trauma bonding, she reaches for comfort from the exact monster who just put her in danger. Her shaking fingers finally grab his hand. Soon, he drives her out to a heavily fortified Mafia estate. The camera lingers on massive stone walls and thick iron gates, mirroring the psychological cage he is building. As those heavy metal doors slam shut, the grim reality sets in. Here is a life lesson we need to remember. Pure exhaustion often wears the mask of consent, quietly pushing us to cross boundaries we can never uncross. This massive estate is an absolute masterclass in psychological warfare. The manor reeks of old money and surveillance, establishing Kyle as the untouchable boss. When Serena questions why she is locked up, he gently strokes her knuckles. It is a calculated move to breed physical dependency. He feeds her the classic lie that isolation is strictly for her protection. Inside, his staff anticipates her every move, stripping away her independence. As he walks her down these halls, his obsession is disguised as gentle care. The sheer opulence of the cold marble is weaponized to overwhelm her exhausted mind. The life lesson here hits hard. Wealth and luxury are often used as beautiful gilded cages, designed specifically to make someone blind to the fact they are caught in a trap. Beneath all that wealth, you spot the quiet red flags of a predator, the faint smell of cigars, a tossed jacket. Walking her past dark portraits, Kyle asserts absolute dominance. He leaves her in a massive guest room, without any timeline for release. When she pushes back, he uses the outside threat of Viscari to justify keeping her locked down. Serena desperately points out the logic that she means nothing to him. His response is a chilling violation. He steps dangerously close, trailing a finger along her jawline to stake a physical claim. His dismissal of her logic reveals a dark truth about obsession. To a fixated mind, the victim's feelings do not matter. It leaves us with a stark life lesson. You can never use logic to reason your way out of someone else's dangerous delusion. Step into this room with me and watch the exact second the air goes completely dead. An interruption makes Kyle's fake warmth vanish, replaced by the soulless stare of a killer. The camera lingers on Serena, capturing her agonizing mental gymnastics. Logic screams that she should want this man to suffer. Yet, watching him embrace his brutal nature sends a sickening panic through her chest. He orders her to rest, dressing up his absolute control as tender care. He justifies his violence by claiming he is going to spill blood purely in her name. Shockingly, his cold certainty does not make her run. It gives her a twisted sense of safety. It teaches us a harsh life lesson about survival. Seeking shelter in the dark shadows of a monster will only ever guarantee your own eventual destruction. The camera slowly pans across her beautiful, terrible cage. These quarters are built to pacify her, using extreme luxury to overwhelm her nervous system. She steps into the shower, frantically scrubbing her skin to wash away the memory of the assault, standing until the water runs freezing cold. Stepping out, she finds fresh clothes, tailored exactly to her measurements. That is a clinically terrifying detail, proving Kyle mapped her dimensions before the abduction even happened. Serena pushes this dark reality down, plunging into deep denial. She whispers that she will leave at dawn, a tragic lie her own mind already rejects. It brings us to a deeply unsettling life lesson. Extreme comfort is frequently the most effective weapon used to silently crush our natural human instinct to escape. Waking up inside a living nightmare is the cruelest part. The camera catches that brief amnesia in Serena's face before reality crashes down. Her phone lights up with frantic messages from her friend. This is the true tragedy of psychological captivity. Serena helps build her own cage, typing a fake reply that severs her only lifeline to the outside world. In the kitchen, she finds Kyle playing house. He pours coffee, a calculated performance, masking the monster underneath. The camera focuses on his freshly split knuckles. Serena actively looks away, choosing willful blindness. When she asks about the bloodbath, his flat dismissal of human life chills the blood. We learn a vital life lesson here. When we actively lie to cover up the darkness surrounding us, we become the silent architects of our own prison. Look closely at the insane tension building here. Kyle casually explains a brutal territorial dispute, painting Serena as a pawn in his violent Mafia chess match. His rival correctly identified her as his singular vulnerability. When Serena challenges this irrational obsession, Kyle reveals the freezing mindset of a true narcissist. His fixation needs no logical foundation. It exists as absolute law. Serena is tearing herself apart inside. Her rational brain begs her to dismiss his possessive behavior as adrenaline. But the trauma bond is already rewiring her emotional circuits, forging a dark, addictive tension every time their eyes lock. We must understand a vital life lesson. The greatest danger is rarely the physical threat itself, but rather our brain's terrifying capacity to romanticize the exact thing that traps us. The camera tightens as Serena makes one desperate push to reclaim her life, demanding to go home. Kyle smoothly counters with a 3-day timeline. It is a psychological trick designed to pacify a captive with a fake horizon. When she rejects his terms, his twisted control crystallizes. He instantly revokes all her choices. Serena calls it exactly what it is: kidnapping. But Kyle uses mental gymnastics, rebranding his imprisonment as necessary protection. He uses physical proximity to dominate her space, while speaking in dangerously soft tones. He shifts all the blame onto his rival, washing his hands of any guilt. The life lesson here is deeply tragic. When someone strips away your freedom under the guise of keeping you safe, they are not your protector. They have simply become your new warden. Let us unpack this together, guys. The psychological trap snaps shut with agonizing precision. Kyle dictates she is staying, claiming he is the only man who can keep her safe. He engineers an isolation so absolute he becomes her only emotional anchor. Serena visibly trembles, fighting to hold on to reality. Then comes the masterstroke, a calculated glimpse of remorse. He whispers that she deserves better. Just as his fingers brush her cheek, an enforcer suddenly shatters the tension. Viscari demands an 8 o'clock meeting. Kyle must come entirely alone. The lighting seems to dim, the air turning heavy with dread. It is an undeniable, fatal setup. The life lesson here is terribly harsh. In a dark world ruled by apex predators, a single second of misplaced trust will always cost you your life. Picture this, guys. The camera creeps in on Kyle, and the lighting is freezing cold, perfectly matching the dead look in his eyes. He is literally ordering a sniper strike for a massive ambush while sipping his morning coffee. To this guy, body bags are just basic math. But check out Serena in the back. She is absolutely losing it, hands shaking like a leaf. She begs him to avoid the trap, clinging to normal human empathy that Kyle just lacks. He takes another slow sip, testing her, and asks if his death would actually bother her. She wants to lie so bad to protect herself, but her shaky voice totally sells her out. Here is a hard truth. Everyday morality crumbles fast when it gets dragged into the gravity of someone who operates on pure, violent conviction. Let us hit pause right here. Because you and I are watching the exact moment Serena totally throws her survival instincts out the window. She whispers that his death would bother her, thinking she is making some defiant boss girl statement. But Kyle just tilts his head, staring at her like a starving wolf. He traces her jawline and promises he is not done. Then he leaves her in this dark Mafia mansion. She touches grand pianos and old books, literally measuring the drapes for her tragic cage. The hardest prison to escape is the one where you fall madly in love with the guy holding the keys. Look at the psychology of her giving up right now. Any normal person locked inside a crime syndicate compound would be smashing windows. But Serena? She just jiggles the heavy oak door handle, lets out a defeated sigh, and totally gives up. It is that creepy apathy that hits when you stop fighting the cage. Then we cut to the misty gardens, showing her looking tiny under this massive stone angel. She is freezing out there, obsessed with the boss who ruined her life. We often burn down our own safe spaces just to keep a toxic person warm. And right there, watching her, is Maria. Maria steps into the scene, and the sharp snap of her pruning shears cuts through the dead silence like a time bomb. For a lady in a Mafia family, her chill vibe is terrifying. She assumes Serena is just the newest flavor of the week. But then, Maria casually mentions that Kyle's late mom planted these exact roses before passing away. And the mood flips. Suddenly, Kyle goes from this ruthless hitman to a sad kid missing his mom. We will literally twist a terrifying predator into a helpless victim in our minds, just because feeling sorry for them is easier than facing the danger. Notice how sneaky this setup is. Maria uses a gentle voice, tricking us into thinking this is a sweet chat. But then the trap slams shut. She leans in, dropping her voice to a deadly whisper, and warns Serena that Kyle is incredibly dangerous. She flat out tells her to run away. But Serena is glued to the floor. She stares at the rose thorns, way too paralyzed to even try pushing against her invisible cage. It is a massive punch to the gut. The longer you sit around making excuses for someone else's totally toxic behavior, the heavier your own chains are going to get. Maria lays it all out, warning her that the cartel life leaves scars that never heal. Then we skip to night, and Kyle rolls out with his hitters. The next few hours are pure anxiety. Serena paces the floor, checking the clock like a loyal mob wife. Finally, at 1:30 in the morning, Kyle walks in, his shirt completely soaked in a rival gang's blood. Any normal instinct would scream to bolt out the door. Instead, Serena slumps her shoulders in massive relief. Trauma can get so twisted that you end up running, for safety, right into the literal jaws of the exact monster. This scene is insanely tense. Serena stands inches away from a guy who reeks of gunpowder and fresh violence. He breathes heavily, confessing he butchered his rival Viscari because the guy dared to touch her. Kyle has this wild, possessive look, acting twisted and protective. He whispers she should be disgusted by him, tossing out a fake escape hatch because he knows he owns her. Logic says run. Instead, she steps closer and hugs a confessed cartel killer. Humans will embrace the most toxic love imaginable, just because the fear of being alone is so much worse. Stick with me and look closely at this exact sequence. We are watching someone sell their soul to the dark side. Craving warmth, Kyle drops his tough Mafia act and pulls Serena into an intense hug, burying his face in her hair like a drowning man. Surrounded by the smell of violence, Serena seals her fate. She anchors to a predator who kills to protect what he owns. But the second he steps away to wash the blood, panic hits her face. She begs him to stay, but he coldly says wait. People will ignore the reddest flags as long as that toxic person fills the empty void in their heart. The camera catches a really creepy detail. Before walking off, he gives her hip a firm tap. It is a psychological trick to keep her chained. Fast forward 40 minutes, and he calls her into this freezing library. He is cleaned up, but he drops a nuke. He is officially engaged to the daughter of Don Vittorio, the top boss. He says this massive betrayal with zero emotion. Then he says he is going to break the peace treaty, making it sound like it is all her fault. You can see the guilt crush her. Never carry the blame when a toxic person ruins their life. They used you for the match. The tension here hits an absolute boiling point. Kyle cranks up the emotional torture, making this broken Mafia engagement sound like a total declaration of war. Watch Serena right here. She practically folds in half, crying that she is just a normal girl dragged into this mess. So Kyle pulls out his heaviest weapon. He steps into her space, his shadow swallowing hers, and drops the L word. He praises her trauma response, twisting her terror into a sign of strength. It is literal love bombing. True monsters do not fall in love. They find your weakness and build a custom cage. This dialogue is insanely dark. He paints this beautiful picture, whispering about planting a quiet rose garden just to see her smile. It is a spectacular lie, made up to hide the fact that he is a literal hitman. When she cries, he wipes her tear away, but it is pure dominance. He swears losing her would be worse than fighting a massive cartel war, and that is when Serena breaks. She admits that even though his violence makes her sick, she feels safe in his shadow. A broken mind will hold on to the exact poison destroying it, as long as that poison blocks out the rest of the world. This final shot is an absolute masterpiece of doom. They are basically agreeing to drive off a cliff together. Then comes the kiss, and there is zero romance here. It is just raw, territorial claiming. The lighting makes the whole thing feel like pure adrenaline, pushing them past a point of no return. When he tells her to stay the night, his bossy tone leaves zero room for argument. It is a done deal. Serena tosses her normal life into a dumpster fire for a maniac. But you and I need to remember this. Never let desperation to feel valued make you confuse obsession for genuine love. The camera follows Serena, floating down this dark hallway, surrounded by the staring eyes of dead cartel bosses. It is literally a museum of sociopaths, leading right to his room. Serena just totally deletes her own identity for this guy. But then morning hits, and that harsh daylight ruins the fantasy. Her bruised lips are the real physical proof that she handed over all her power. But the instant he pulls her close again, her brain shuts off. He asks if she regrets it, testing if he still owns her. You can lock the doors all you want, but your bad choices will always track you down. Kyle finally picks up that phone, and guys, the sweet boyfriend act just completely evaporates. Stick with me here, because this is exactly where his fake reality shatters. You literally see the warmth suck right out of his face, his eyes turning into absolute ice. The Bellicaro family found out the engagement is off, and Don Vittorio wants a sit-down right this second. For the first time ever, raw panic hits Kyle, and Serena is standing right there watching the meltdown. He drops the bomb, choosing her, just painted a giant glowing target on her back. She starts hyperventilating, total terror locking her in place. She is officially stuck in his twisted, high-end birdcage. Honestly, the lesson here is pretty simple. You can never build a peaceful, safe life when your foundation is made out of someone else's highly dangerous secrets. Kyle tells her to stay locked inside the compound, pulling that classic toxic move of calling a literal cage a safe house. This dude genuinely thinks he can just waltz into a mafia boss's lair and walk out breathing. He grabs her face, frantically promising to fix a situation that is already a complete dumpster fire, kissing her like he's trying to brand her before he bails. The shot lingers on Serena, watching him play dress-up in his fake armor. In that suffocating silence, you can tell something inside her just permanently breaks. She finally gets it. Look, The hard truth of life is that ignoring giant red flags never makes them magically disappear. It just gives them time to wrap tighter around your own neck. Now she's left pacing that freezing stone floor, realizing she completely relies on a guy who just marched straight into his own grave. By the time the sun actually drops, Serena's nerves are completely deep-fried. She's standing frozen by the window, begging the universe to let him come back. But those heavy headlights tearing up the driveway? Yeah, those definitely aren't Kyle's. 6 massive black sedans just obliterate the front gates. Let's watch this massive disaster unfold together, guys. This is the exact second Kyle's blind arrogance burns everything to ash. A guard yanks her arm, screaming to run right as the compound gets lit up. Gunfire completely shreds the night, raining shattered glass everywhere. Serena hits the floor in pure survival mode while guys drop all around her. Then comes this dead, terrifying silence, broken only by the slow click of expensive dress shoes on marble. Don Vittorio strolls in looking like the Grim Reaper. Simple life lesson. Arrogant pride will always invite your own absolute ruin. The camera pans over, and we get a front row seat to a whole different breed of monster. Don Vittorio is staring down at her like she's a piece of gum stuck to his shoe. This freezing, psycho smile creeps onto his face as he casually asks if Kyle is really ready to bleed for her. With his neat silver hair and tailored suit, the guy literally looks like somebody's sweet old grandpa. But bro, that is nothing but a mask, covering up 40 solid years of pure Mafia brutality. The contrast in this scene is absolutely wild. You have this pristine white marble totally painted in red, with a loyal guard lying flatlined right next to her. Serena goes entirely blank, her brain just pulling the plug to handle the sheer shock of the slaughter. And here is the realest life lesson you will ever get. Real monsters rarely look scary in the daylight. Most of the time, they look exactly like the nicest, most polite person in the room. Just listen to the absolute, toxic disgust in Vittorio's voice when he orders her to get up. He is standing there flanked by young thugs, with totally dead eyes, guys who said their humanities be scooped out by the syndicate a long time ago. The old man slowly circles Serena, sizing her up like cheap meat at a deli, straight up roasting her for shaking and looking so terrified. But here is the wild part that is actually fueling his rage. He literally cannot wrap his brain around how a total nobody ruined his master plan. To this psycho, his own daughter is just a pawn, raised entirely to lock down a massive mob merger. His villain brain simply cannot process that Kyle chose real feelings over a shiny Mafia princess. It is a heavy truth, but when you spend your life treating people like literal property, you will never understand the massive power of a genuine human connection. The pure hatred coming off this dude is literally suffocating the entire room. Pinned against the wall, Serena frantically stammers, trying to explain she only survived by cursing at Kyle in his own language, showing that rebellious spark he liked. But Vittorio just drops this hollow, absolute nightmare of a laugh. He flat out tells her that marriage is nothing but a calculated business deal. His massive hand clamps onto her jaw so hard that you can see dark bruises instantly forming. Guys, he isn't sad about his daughter's broken heart. He is just embarrassed. 3 solid years of mob planning went up in smoke, and it makes him look weak. In his totally messed up head, a public insult demands a body bag. He whispers that she is going to be his bloody warning sign. The lesson here is brutal. Sometimes the most devastating violence comes from nothing but a fragile, deeply wounded ego. With one tiny silent nod, the whole illusion of choice is just violently yanked away. Serena's fight or flight takes over, and she makes a break for it, but come on. She is absolutely no match for trained mob hitters. This absolute tank of an enforcer's snatches her out of mid-air like a literal rag doll. She's kicking and screaming her lungs out until Vittorio casually tells them to gag her because her voice is annoying him. They shove a rough cloth into her mouth and start dragging her out. Through the busted doors, we get a shot of Maria, the housekeeper, frozen in raw terror. She is violently shaking, totally broken from years of pretending not to see the mob business. They chuck Serena into a dark van that reeks of expensive leather and gunpowder. It just proves a really sad truth. Choosing to stay silent around true evil will eventually make you an absolute prisoner to it. The rough fabric of that gag is wrecking her mouth, and heavy zip ties bite into her wrists so hard her hands go completely numb. Vittorio slides into the front seat, super calm, lighting up a smoke while leaving victims behind like trash. He tells the driver to head to Kyle's old warehouse, which is an absolutely unhinged, poetic spot for a mob hit. You and I are watching a textbook narcissist direct a horror movie right here. It is all about flexing dominance. The goon next to Serena is literally just scrolling his phone while she suffocates in pure panic. She realizes the worst part of all this. Kyle has absolutely zero clue she got snatched. This nightmare drive goes on for 20 brutal minutes into the middle of nowhere. A tough pill to swallow is that sometimes pure, crushing isolation is the silent weapon that destroys you first. The convoy parks outside this totally decaying warehouse, covered in rust and busted glass. Vittorio steps out, stretching his back like he just pulled up to a 5-star hotel instead of a literal murder scene. He barks at his guys to drag her inside and make the call to Kyle, telling him he better show up completely alone. They yank her into this suffocating, pitch-black room. A couple of sketchy fluorescent lights flicker on, showing a single heavy steel chair bolted straight to the concrete. Serena's heart completely flatlines. The floor under that chair is permanently stained black from years of old blood. They strap her arms and chest to it so tight, she can barely even manage a half-breath. When they finally rip the cloth out of her mouth, she violently gasps, her throat completely destroyed. Basic life rule number 1, guys. Never walk blindly into the dark, just because someone told you it was a safe bet. Vittorio drags over a rusted folding chair and crosses his legs like he's waiting for a latte. With this super dead voice, he asks if she has any idea about the dark history of this exact room. She just weakly shakes her head. He drops the bomb that a guy named Viscari was brutally tortured and ended right in the very car chair by Kyle just 3 days ago. This absolutely sickening smile stretches across Vittorio's face. He is totally eating up the irony that Kyle caught a body for her in this room, and now she's going to bleed out in the exact same spot. Then, the Mafia Dawn lays out the ultimate twisted trap. To walk out alive, she has to look Kyle dead in the eye, scream that she never loved him, and break his soul so badly that he goes crawling back to Isabella. The bitter lesson is wild. Highly manipulative people will always force you to pull always forth a trigger on your own happiness. The dude doesn't even blink as he casually lays out option 2. If she says no, he will make Kyle stand there and watch them slowly torture her until she drops. That threat hits her chest like a literal freight train. She screams that he's completely out of his mind. But this psycho shrugs and calls it a practical business move. It is the ultimate psychological trap. She either destroys her own relationship or dies in agony while permanently breaking Kyle's brain. Vittorio slowly stands up, dusting off his suit, giving her exactly 30 minutes to make her choice before Kyle gets there. Then he just fades into the dark, but Serena has been hyper-focused, tracking time since she was grabbed. She knows she doesn't have 30 minutes. She only has 18. The most terrifying truth in the world? Time is the one thing you can never negotiate with. No matter how hard you beg, the massive roar of a heavy engine shatters the quiet, followed by the slam of a car door. Kyle sps straight into the nasty lighting, showing up 100% alone. Serena looks at him, and you and I can literally see her heart break in real time. It is the craziest irony of this whole story. She actually finds comfort in the hands of this insanely violent guy. He is decked out in all black, radiating pure destruction. But the absolute second his eye goes to hers, his tough guy armor just totally cracks. He whispers her name, losing his cold mafia grip. Out of nowhere, Vittorio steps from the dark, doing this super villain slow clap. Kyle doesn't even hesitate. He instantly offers to surrender and take the arranged marriage if it buys her life. Vittorio just hits him with a cruel smile. It shows the truth about sacrifice. True love isn't about grand gestures. It is handing your worst enemy the knife, just to keep your person breathing. Let us jump right into this absolute madness. Vittorio treats Serena like a cheap prop in his twisted games. Kyle steps up, and instantly every single barrel in the room snaps straight to his chest. He threatens to wipe out the old man's bloodline, but Vittorio just smirks and pulls a silver pistol. This guy is a narcissist, starving for total submission. He demands Kyle drop to his knees, take the marriage, and pay a $10 million fine. Kyle does not even hesitate. He accepts everything, crashing down into a literal puddle of blood on the concrete. Serena is sobbing, watching the most lethal guy she knows throw away his crown just for her. It hits us with a heavy life lesson. The strongest people in your world are not the ones who never fall. They are the ones who gladly eat dirt so you get to keep breathing. Vittorio just refuses to stop twisting the psychological knife. He straight up forces Kyle to beg like a dog. Kyle offers his entire criminal empire, his fortune, and his own life to buy Serena a ticket out. Serena is a total wreck, her spirit completely shattered. The old boss steps up, jams his piece against Kyle's skull, and mocks him about how love makes alphas weak. Then, he pulls the trigger. A hollow click echoes through the room. Kyle does not even flinch, his eyes pitch black. Laughing it off, Vittorio points his weapon at Serena, calling her a loose end. Boom! That is exactly when Kyle explodes off the floor as smoke grenades blast through the windows. It proves a massive life lesson. Those who mock true devotion are usually way too arrogant to spot the fatal trap they just walked into. Stick with me here, because this is exactly where the power dynamic violently flips. Through the thick smoke, familiar hands snatch Serena. It is Kyle, slicing her ropes and dodging the crossfire like an absolute predator. He drags her behind an armored car. Completely shaking, she stammers that he swore he came alone. Kyle just flashes this terrifying, hollow smile and admits he totally lied. Why on earth would a mob boss walk blindly into a slaughter? He vanishes back into the fog, and his crew executes a flawlessly brutal takedown. When the gunfire stops, Kyle emerges dripping with fresh blood. He drags a broken Vittorio by the collar, tossing him right at her feet. It leaves us with a brutal life lesson. Never mistake someone's willingness to suffer as proof that they cannot entirely destroy you. Look at how wild this brutal reversal gets. The old boss chokes on his own blood, but still tries to spin his toxic mind games. Kyle shuts that nonsense down, driving the guy's face straight into the concrete. He leaves him breathing on purpose. The absolute worst punishment for a narcissist is surviving public humiliation. Kyle orders his boys to drag the trash away as a warning. Then, the craziest switch happens. The cold killer instantly melts into a desperate, trembling wreck. He crushes Serena to his chest, rambling frantic apologies as his Mafia armor completely shatters. She just holds him tight, whispering that he saved her. This drops a massive life lesson on us. Sometimes, the exact person who drags the most chaos into your life is the only one who can make you feel totally safe. They are literally glued to each other in a room, buried under bullet casings and devastation. Kyle hits her with a harsh warning that sounds like a dark promise. He straight up tells her that rolling with him means non-stop paranoia and random violence. Any normal person would bolt. But the camera lingers, showing a massive trauma bond snapping into place. Serena does not see a monster anymore. She sees the ultimate shield that kept her breathing. The insane danger does not scare her. Off it pulls her closer. When she actively chooses this Mafia lifestyle, you can see pure, desperate relief wash over Kyle's face. They share a kiss tasting like copper and survival. It leaves us with a super uncomfortable life lesson. Shared trauma does not just break people down, it welds them together in messy ways that logic can never untangle. We all know this crazy choice carries a heavy price tag. Kyle instantly cuts ties with the rival syndicate, totally canceling his arranged Mafia marriage. When Serena asks how they will survive the massive turf war he just sparked, his icy calmness is terrifying. He flatly states they will win. The tense drive back to his estate is a masterclass in deep paranoia. He swaps vehicles and takes random detours to dodge invisible shadows. Serena, wiped out by the adrenaline crash, slumps against his shoulder. As the sun rises over his compound, the bloody toll of his empire is obvious. The gorgeous architecture is shredded by fresh bullet holes. Here is a hard life lesson for you. Your physical space will always eventually reflect your internal chaos, no matter how much cash you drop trying to hide the damage. Let us look at this quiet aftermath. Kyle's hitmen are scrubbing blood off the floors, trying to erase the night's brutal sins. He rushes Serena behind heavy iron gates, locking them inside a secure bunker. Guys, this is where his untouchable mob boss persona totally shatters. He grabs her face with shaking hands, deeply terrified, because he knows how close he came to getting her killed. He admits his own massive ego almost put her in a body bag. While his brain spirals over the next wave of attacks, Serena grabs his hands, grounding him in reality. She knows they are standing in a literal nightmare, but she refuses to leave. This drops a massive life lesson. Genuine loyalty is never about blinding yourself to the red flags. It is about staring right at the worst possible outcome and making the hardcore choice to stay anyway. In this totally bleak storyline, intimacy is basically their only survival tool. The camera zooms in as they frantically check each other for bullet grazes, tallying up the damage. Kyle completely breaks, admitting he has zero control over his insane obsession with her. Serena feels that same toxic pull, fully aware her mere existence is tearing his Mafia empire apart. Psychologically, she twists this by linking her self-worth to his extreme violence. If this lethal guy will literally burn the city down for her, she feels like a queen. Outside, the loud thuds of guys boarding up windows sound exactly like a ticking doomsday clock. This brings us to a super tragic life lesson. Tying your personal value to the sheer amount of destruction a person will cause, for you is a deadly game. When violence is your love language, someone is guaranteed to bleed. Serena blacks out for 8 solid hours, her nervous system shutting down after all that trauma. When she wakes up, the massive bed is empty, and the silence is creeping her out. Suddenly, violent screaming bleeds up through the floorboards. She grabs an oversized shirt and sneaks over to the stairs. You have to hear this insane argument going down. His top lieutenant is raging at Kyle, yelling that shooting the old Don was pure tactical suicide. The rival mob is going to want serious blood. But Kyle does not care at all. He snaps right back, claiming that bullet was a necessary message. He is literally torching a 3-year peace treaty just to keep his girl. It points to a brutal life lesson. When blind obsession grabs the steering wheel, all logic goes out the window, and you will gladly crash your own life, just to prove a point. The tension completely explodes when a lieutenant tells Kyle he is acting like a rabid dog instead of a mafia boss. Big mistake. Kyle instantly defaults to his favorite language, pure, unfiltered violence. He gets right in the guy's face, threatening to launch him straight through the glass window if he speaks again. The entire room drops into terrified silence. Hiding on the stairs, Serena watches 5 hardcore mobsters, sweating as they try to manage the absolute monster running their syndicate. The oldest enforcers tries a diplomatic angle, asking if they are paying for this mess with cash or body bags. Kyle stares him down and swears he will gladly burn his own criminal empire to ash just to protect her. Here is a bitter life lesson about power. All the influence in the world means absolutely nothing if you are a total slave to your own unchecked emotions. Picture the heavy vibe in that study. We are literally watching a dude take a sledgehammer to his own family's mob legacy. Kyle stands there like a brick wall, rejecting the peace treaty marriage and spitting on what his father built. His crew tries playing it cool, carefully pointing out the reality. Serena is a total outsider, and risking hundreds of loyal shooters over romance is straight up insane. Kyle just turns his back, icing them out entirely. As the defeated gangsters shuffle out, the oldest veteran stops. He turns his scarred face and locks eyes directly with Serena on the stairs. His look is this brutal mix of heavy pity and absolute disgust. It teaches us a super tough life lesson. You might think you are the main character in an epic love story, but to the people bleeding for your choices, you are just a walking disaster. Let us pause and really soak in this quiet disaster. The heavy door clicks shut, and the silence is absolutely deafening. It is just Serena and Kyle left. Notice how the shadows cling to his tense frame, with his hands shoved in his pockets and his jaw locked tight. You can literally see a man losing his entire grip on reality. He is staring at her with exhausted, hollow eyes, silently begging her to validate his total madness. He desperately needs her to confirm he is not crazy for torching a massive Mafia empire over her. Meanwhile, Serena is completely paralyzed across the room, terrified she is just his next shiny obsession. Here is the vital life lesson hiding in this dark moment. The absolute second you start caring about a toxic person's emotional pain more than your own physical safety, the psychological trap has already snapped shut. Let us kick this off, guys. Just listen to the ragged edge of Kyle's voice right here. He describes the fear of losing Serena like he is physically drowning. It is pure, raw panic when she whispers that she is riding with him no matter what. Her voice totally cracks. That tiny tremor is the tragic birth of total dependency, tying her survival to the exact guy who painted a massive target on her back. Outside, his crew is gearing up for a bloodbath, but these two are completely blinded by obsession. It leaves us with a pretty simple life lesson. Arrogance will always convince you. Grab dense the kenate you can rewrite the rules of a brutal world. But honestly, it usually just drags everyone you actually care about straight into an early grave. Serena knows she is walking straight into a butcher shop. Her gut instincts never miss. Yet Kyle tries to paint this suicide mission as some epic power play, genuinely believing the old boss will respect his raw nerve. Bro, that is a fatal miscalculation. Vittorio is a creature of pure ego. He does not honor bravery. He violently crushes anyone who steps out of line. Kyle is basically dragging her right back into her darkest nightmare, forcing her to smell rusted blood all over again. Look at her dead eyes. Deep trauma has already burned away her capacity for actual fear. It reveals a really dark, simple life lesson. The terrible anticipation of violence rots your soul much faster than the act itself. Kyle is gambling everything. The camera lingers on Serena as she forces a totally devastating mental reset. The tension in this dim room is literally suffocating. She is locked inside a fortress of cold steel and loaded weapons, and Kyle pulls her close, telling her to bury every single natural human feeling. He makes her stare into that vanity mirror until the raw terror in her eyes hardens into dead ice. It is an agonizing transformation. She is shedding her soft skin purely out of necessity, because if she walks through that door, showing even a drop of hesitation, those hungry wolves will tear her apart. This brings us to a profound, simple life lesson. Sometimes, to survive the absolute worst storms life throws at you, you have to completely extinguish the innocent person you used to be. Just one day later, that innocent girl is entirely gone. Look at her dark clothes and that vacant, freezing stare. It is a tragic camouflage designed to hide her among seasoned killers. Kyle watches her with a wild, possessive hunger, absolutely proving the pure toxicity of their bond. He offers her a quiet exit, knowing perfectly well she is too tangled in his web to leave. He pulls her tight against his chest, spiking her adrenaline to guarantee blind loyalty. It is a chilling display of mental control. This leaves us with a stark, simple life lesson. The person pulling your strings will often use affection as a loaded weapon, convincing you to march toward the firing squad with a smile on your face. This is not romance. It is just a fast track to an early grave. Let us jump in the back of this cart together, because the atmosphere is practically choking them right now. They roll past lines of heavily armed guards, and Sina's bones are literally screaming at her to run. Her pulse is thrashing, terrified of the rival waiting to butcher them. Yet, watch how she closes her eyes and forces her brain to rebrand this horrific panic as profound love. It is the exact same fatal delusion blinding the boss's men, who think bleeding out for a tyrant is some massive honor. This gives us a heartbreaking, simple life lesson. The human mind will construct any beautiful fantasy just to avoid confronting a gruesome reality. The black sedan finally idles outside a lavish restaurant, offering a sickening contrast to the bloody slaughter awaiting them inside. The golden lighting of this restaurant looks so peaceful on the surface. But watch Serena's eyes as she pieces together the grim reality. She clocks the subtle tilt of security cameras, the unnatural bulges under tailored coats, and the eerie lack of normal customers. Kyle nudges her, giving a silent command to straighten her spine. She instantly pulls on a mask of cold dominance to hide her trembling hands. They step past the elite hitmen. Notice their flat, completely dead eyes. These guys end lives without a single flicker of remorse. It brings a chilling, simple life lesson into focus. The true monsters of this world never roar or draw attention to themselves. They stand perfectly still, in the quiet shadows, waiting to drop you the second your guard is down. Check out the layout of this room, guys. Every single shadow is deliberately cast to intimidate. Sitting at the head of the table is Don Vittorio. His breathing is shallow, and his body is literally decaying from a gunshot wound, but his eyes still blaze with pure malice. Because his physical body is failing, his massive ego demands, he breaks someone just to feel like a god again. He locks his predatory gaze right onto Serena, picking the most vulnerable target to absorb his venom. Kyle stays completely motionless beside her, refusing to give an inch. Vittorio lets out a wretched laugh, coughing up crimson blood onto his chin. It is a grotesque sight that carries a simple life lesson. Men poisoned by absolute power will gleefully burn the world to ash just to keep their rotting thrones. Listen to Vittorio list his fallen soldiers. Do not let him fool you. He feels zero grief for those men. He is just mad his reputation took a hit. He is a dying king throwing a bloody tantrum, willing to watch his empire burn if it guarantees Kyle suffers. The underboss pleads for logic, but the old Don just cranks up his venom, hurling filthy insults at Serena. You can see the muscles in Kyle's jaw flex, ready to snap, but Serena slides her shaking hand over his to anchor him down. It is wild to see Kyle demand respect for a woman he just walked into an execution chamber. This reveals a harsh, simple life lesson. In a brutal underworld, a bruised ego is infinitely more dangerous than a broken heart. Wounded pride is the spark that actually starts the massive wars. Watch the exact second this negotiation falls off a cliff. Marco tries to bridge the gap by offering massive wealth, but for a fading boss like Vittorio, money means nothing. He demands pure submission, ordering Kyle to fulfill the old arranged marriage and treating Serena like dirt. In response, Kyle aggressively laces his fingers through Serena's right in front of everyone. It is an unforgivable insult. Kyle keeps pushing logic and offering territory, totally missing the real issue. Vittorio grits his bloody teeth and forces his rotting body to stand up. That dreadful silence confirms the meeting is completely over. The life lesson here is brutal and simple. You can never use logic to negotiate with wounded pride. To an egomaniac, any compromise is just a blade straight to the chest. The shadows swallow the old man as he hands down his death sentence. He turns his back, dismissing her. But Serena takes a deep breath and flips the script. She openly confesses she is a nobody, which throws the room off balance. Then she hits the ultimate nerve, declaring Kyle belongs to her, in a way Vittorio never possessed him. The boss chuckles, mocking love. Serena does not blink. She tells him his empire is just cold terror, dressed up as devotion. It is an act of absolute suicide. Watch her shaking hands, and you get a vital, simple life lesson. Never underestimate a person with nothing left to lose. Strip away their safety, and they will forge your secrets into a knife, aimed right at your chest. Stick with me, because we are watching a massive miscalculation unfold. Serena dropped a psychological bomb on the boss, exposing how far Kyle will go for her. But she misses the fatal flaw. You never threaten a tyrant who views himself as a god. Watch how the lighting catches Vittorio's face. He flashes a chilling, microscopic smile, revealing the hollow eyes of a true predator. With a casual flick of his wrist, he orders her execution, like he is asking for a glass of water. A guard reaches for his weapon, and Kyle instantly throws his massive frame right into the line of fire. The illusion of diplomacy violently shatters. This leaves us with a bitter, simple life lesson. You can never use human logic to talk a monster out of being a monster once their bloodlust takes over. Picture this scene bursting onto your screen. The alleyway ambush is a masterpiece of suffocating chaos. Gunfire violently tears through the night air. Serena experiences a total mental collapse, folding into a terrified ball, while Kyle literally drags her over the wet pavement. They burst into the street, just as their getaway ride erupts into a massive fireball. Vittorio's hitmen swarm the shadows like wolves. Kyle fights back with the lethal grace of a guy raised to deal out death, but the math is against him. Too many guns, zero time. Seeing a bullet finally tear into Kyle completely shatters Serena. The simple life lesson, written in her screaming eyes, is devastating. True terror is not facing your own death. It is watching your only safe harbor bleed out right in front of you. Stick with me here, because you and I are jumping straight into the back of a getaway car, and it is absolute chaos. Serena is having a total meltdown, clutching Kyle like he is her lifeline, while hot blood literally pours through her fingers. She is screaming that her top guy is dying. But look at this absolute unit, Kyle. The man has a literal bullet inside him, and his paranoia is still running the whole show. He straight up refuses a real hospital, barking at his driver to hit the gas, get to the safe house, and find their underground dock. It is wild, but it leaves us with a harsh truth. When the world goes up in flames, we drop the polite act. We do not run to safety. We sprint right back to the exact same toxic people who started the fire in the first place. The engine absolutely screams as this black sedan tears through the alleyways. Serena is pressing all her body weight onto his gunshot wound, but the guy is leaking like a broken faucet. Under the streetlights, Kyle already looks like a ghost with one foot in the grave. She is bawling, begging him to stay awake. And what does the boss do? He actually apologizes for failing to protect her. She snaps back, screaming that he literally just took a bullet for her. His laugh turns into this brutal, wet cough. It feels like a lifetime before his muscle finally drags him to Dr. Chen and his surgical tools. It points to a messed up reality about human nature. Pure terror completely warps your vision. You start believing the guy who dragged you into a literal mob war is your only safe harbor. Dr. Chen kicks everyone out of the room, but Serena is not budging. She plants her feet, completely defying the doctor, terrified of losing her only anchor in this Mafia nightmare. The underground surgeon works with ice-cold precision while Kyle drifts in pure agony. When Chen casually drops that the boss is lucky the bullet missed his organs, Serena lets out a dry, bitter laugh. Chen claps back that luck is a joke in their business, ordering 6 weeks of bed rest. Kyle snaps awake, his massive mobster ego flaring up as he instantly rejects the command. But Chen does not even blink, reminding the Don that his underworld crown means zero if he is in a body bag. It is a harsh life lesson. All the power and dirty money in the world mean absolutely nothing when your body finally fails you. Driven by this toxic need to stay in control, Kyle tries to force himself out of bed. Blinding pain instantly, body slams him right back into the sheets. Dr. Chen gives it to him straight. Stay flat, or rip your stitches and bleed out. Serena grips his shaking hand, her voice cracking as she begs the boss to stop fighting. The hardened enforcer looks at her terrified face, swallows his ego, and closes his eyes. Before ducking out, the doctor drops a heavy truth. He has known this crime family for decades, and he has never seen the killer look at anyone with such wild obsession. Serena just slumps into a chair, numb to the blood on her clothes. Here is a brutal truth. When you make saving a broken person your entire identity, you completely erase yourself. Serena is absolutely shattered. Her fingers are clamped around his hand, terrified that if she lets go, he is going to flatline. Outside, the sounds of a mob war bleed into the room. Yelling hitters, screeching tires, the heavy click of loaded weapons. Vittorio has turned a truce into an absolute bloodbath. Crushed by guilt, Serena buries her face into Kyle's burning skin. Suddenly, his eyes snap wide open, sharp and lethal, completely shutting down her crying. In a gritty whisper, he swears he knew the deadly price of claiming her, and he would gladly take another bullet to pay it again. It teaches us a chilling lesson. A poisoned mind never runs from destruction. It simply uses pure chaos to justify its dangerous obsessions, forever mistaking violent control for actual love. Now check this out with me, because the power dynamic is totally flipping. Kyle promises to end this turf war with the cold confidence of a predator. Serena knows it is a lie, but her trauma bond makes her swallow it. For 12 brutal hours, they are trapped in a room, reeking of dried blood. Kyle is thrashing around in the grip of savage night terrors, while Serena calmly measures his pills and wipes his face. When the sun comes up, his mob boss instinct is to grab a gun and jump back into the bloodbath. But Serena stuns us. She puts both hands on this lethal killer's chest and shoves him hard, right back onto the mattress. It leaves us with a wild truth. Sometimes, the only way to save a totally destructive soul is to become the one immovable force they simply cannot push around. His tactical mobster brain refuses to shut off. He hoarsely demands a full war council with his hitters, but Serena steps right in front of the door and crosses her arms. She levels up from a terrified hostage into his literal warden, ordering the Don to stay in bed. The camera catches this unbelievable glitch. The aggressive Mafia boss actually backs down, his terrifying aura melting into quiet obedience. He reaches up, tracing her jawline like she is the last real thing on Earth, and confesses his fears. She tries to take the blame for the ambush, but he shuts her down, refusing to let her carry his underworld sins. Here is a wild psychological truth. Shared trauma builds this insane illusion of absolute safety, even while your entire house is actively burning down around you. The shadows deepen as Kyle breaks down the brutal Mafia math. Vittorio is blinded by murderous rage, and a massive cartel siege is coming. Then, this ruthless killer does the unthinkable. He slides Serena a forged identity, begging her to ghost the syndicate and run for her life. Anyone else would sprint for the exit, but her psychological chains are locked tight. She shoves the fake papers away, refusing to let him face the firing squad alone. You can actually see Kyle's dark soul fracture on screen. He is torn between the selfish hype of keeping her and the sickening dread that his mob life will get her killed. He pulls her into a frantic kiss. It drops a heavy lesson on us. Toxic love built in a war zone will completely fry your basic human instinct to survive. Stick with me, because you and I are about to unpack some top-tier cinematic madness. Kyle is mapping out a completely suicidal chess move. His wild idea? Turn the neutral families against Vittorio by walking directly into a massive mob summit to expose the old man as a total narcissist. The color straight up drains from Serena's face. He is proposing to walk unarmed into a room full of apex predators who would gladly ice him to dodge a turf war. Kyle stares into her panicked eyes and fully admits the strategy is functionally insane, but his grip tightens on her hand, swearing it is the final ace left in their bloody deck. It hits us with a hardcore life lesson. Sometimes, the only way to beat an unstoppable monster is to stop running and step willingly right into its waiting jaws. Picture this frame. As the heavy weight of the summit sets in, Kyle blinks first. He pitches a desperate escape plan, begging to drop the Empire and vanish like ghosts. It is a frantic scramble for control, but watch the camera lock onto Serena. She stares at the dried blood under her nails and actively chooses the war zone. She whispers that catching a bullet next to him is better than living safely without him. This is the peak of a trauma bond! Kyle shatters, pulling her against his chest to keep his sanity intact. He starts a 72-hour countdown for their deadly play. Serena chokes back tears, ignoring the odds that they will both be in body bags by Friday. Here is a wild truth. When love morphs into trauma, going down with a sinking ship feels like an absolute victory. Pause the film right here and look at this insane framing. Serena is fully gaslighting herself, convinced that dragging each other into a shared mob grave is some epic romance. It is the ultimate toxic coping mechanism. Over the next 3 days, this dark estate turns into a massive pressure cooker. The camera tracks Kyle, blood soaking his bandages, trying to run a cartel from a stained mattress. Meanwhile, Serena finally clocks Vittorio for what he is, a methodical parasite, demanding absolute ownership of his people. Kyle's dad ran the streets with cold math, but Kyle is running on pure, chaotic emotion, tying his operation to fragile loyalty. Here is a harsh reality. Building your entire life on volatile, unchecked emotion is just constructing your very own beautiful guillotine. You and I know Kyle is gambling his life on blind trust, which is a total joke in a room packed with sociopaths. The harsh lighting catches Serena watching him gear up. She asks if the other crime families actually have his back, and Kyle gives her this heartbreaking, dead-eyed stare. He knows these rival bosses only care about their own bank accounts. If he shows one drop of weakness, they will let Vittorio eat him alive. His only play is to puff out his chest and pray the other monsters flinch first. But when Serena brings up their love, you can see the agony crush his tough guy face. He admits his love is the exact poison that will get her killed. The hardest lesson we ever learn? Sometimes loving someone fiercely is the exact same thing as completely destroying them. Listen up, because this is the exact moment Serena crosses the point of no return. The camera zooms in as she looks at a normal life, hits reject, and dives headfirst into the meat grinder just because Kyle holds her hand. It is insane how fast the heart adapts to pure hell just to avoid being alone. Kyle pulls her in close, his shaking grip doing all the talking. They sit in the dark, cooking up this fragile delusion that logic will stop a psychopath like Vittorio. Watching Kyle pretend they have a chance where the scrum screams they are dead is brutal. You and I both know the truth, but honestly, we all do this. We build comfortable little lies in the dark because facing the terrifying reality of our own fragility is way too heavy of a burden to carry. The camera sweeps over Manhattan, signaling the ultimate game has begun on neutral turf. Look closely at their outfits, guys. They are literally dressing for a slaughter. Kyle slides into a dark suit to hide the fresh stitches ripping open in his side. Serena slips into a gorgeous gown, acting as a psychological bulletproof vest. Kyle then hands her a massive diamond. People make this tragic mistake constantly, tossing a shiny object at a massive problem, praying it fixes the doom. Serena takes it in silence, knowing full well a pretty rock cannot stop a bullet. As their convoy rolls through the neon-lit city, she completely zones out. The lesson here is brutal but real. When your daily reality becomes far too agonizing to handle, the human mind simply packs its bags and completely checks out. Do not let the gorgeous brownstone exterior fool you. It hides decades of pure rot and mafia murder. Serena grips Kyle's hand with such force, her knuckles glow white in the streetlights. They walk up the steps toward what feels exactly like an execution. Heavy doors groan open into a dim conference room, instantly establishing the food chain. 5 ruthless bosses sit in the shadows, monsters moving billions in blood money without blinking. At the head of the table sits Old Man Romano, the apex predator of this miserable jungle. He is just waiting to carve Kyle up for letting emotion run the show. It proves a bitter truth we must all face. No matter how high you climb the ladder, there is always someone older, and much colder, waiting quietly to tear you right back down to the dirt. We are locked inside this claustrophobic boardroom where actual monsters negotiate. Heavies flank the walls, and across the table sits Vittorio. His shoulder is packed with thick bandages, but his eyes boil with toxic ego. Romano flashes a terrifyingly slow smile and gestures for them to sit. Serena drops into her chair, stiff as a board, locking her trauma away just to survive the hour. The heavy door clicks shut, sealing their tomb. Romano brings up the brewing war, and Vittorio instantly starts screaming about how Kyle has absolutely zero honor. It is painfully ironic to watch a venomous snake complain about fairness. But here is a bitter truth we must accept. The absolute loudest voices constantly demanding honor are usually the exact same people, hiding a very sharp knife right behind your back. Watch the camera push in as Kyle tries to keep his cool. He stares these killers dead in the eye, boldly claiming he chose love over mob duty. Vittorio instantly loses his mind. The guy is a textbook narcissist, so any loss of control feels like a physical attack on his fragile ego. He calls Kyle weak, which is hilarious since Vittorio wants a city-wide bloodbath because his pride got scratched. Serena is caught in the crossfire, quietly hyperventilating, as the bosses demand she be erased to fix the alliance. But look under the table. Kyle firmly grabs her trembling hand, and her panic melts into tragic devotion. She clings for safety to the exact man who dragged her into this deadly trap. We frequently seek comfort from the very hands that broke us, and it is almost always a fatal mistake. The Boston boss mocks Kyle for risking an empire over one woman, but Kyle is playing absolute chess. Without breaking eye contact, he offers $10 million, prime real estate, and a public apology. He will surrender anything except Serena. Vittorio instantly twists the knife, bringing up Kyle's murdered father. That is exactly what tyrants do. They weaponize your deepest grief. But Kyle does not flinch. He warns the room that Vittorio will burn their shared profits over a personal grudge. Kyle brilliantly uses their own greed against them, painting Vittorio as an unstable liability rather than a boss. The lesson here is simple. To defeat a raging monster, do not try to match his raw strength. Just expose his emotional instability to the powerful men holding the purse strings. Stick with me to unpack this brilliant psychological power play. Romano slowly nods at Kyle's cold logic, and Vittorio's fragile ego completely shatters. He jumps up, screaming for loyalty, trapped in a mindset where everyone is either a puppet or a mortal enemy. Romano instantly shuts him down, threatening to cut Vittorio off from the syndicate. Take away a raging, narcissist's audience, and they suffocate. The terror of abandonment forces Vittorio back into his chair. It is a true masterclass in taming a rabid beast. Romano bumps the fine to $15 million and demands an apology, tossing Vittorio just enough respect to stop a shootout, while entirely ripping out his fangs. True power never has to shout. It simply redraws the boundaries while the loudmouths tire themselves out. Vittorio spits at the deal to protect his ego, but Romano ignores him, slamming down a 5-year peace treaty. Desperate for control, Vittorio points a shaking fingers at Serena, searching for a loophole to hurt Kyle. Romano coldly declares her off limits. Serena is panicking so hard, her chest heaves like her heart might shatter. The agonizing lesson here is realizing your fate is sometimes controlled by men who do not care if you breathe. The vote passes, boxing Vittorio in. Look at his face. He is flushing violent purple, fists trembling with toxic rage. His ego screams to draw a weapon, but heavy peer pressure forces him to swallow it. He accepts the terms, but do not be fooled. A suppressed fire never actually dies. It just burns quietly under the floorboards until the house comes down. The tension breaks and Serena nearly collapses as the adrenaline crashes out. It is sickening watching these men pivot into casual small talk, ignoring they just gambled with human lives. Romano gives them 3 days to get the cash, but the camera lingers on Vittorio. He slithers around the table, whispering a dark promise of destruction into Kyle's ear. This is exactly how a narcissist repairs a shattered ego, by fantasizing about your ruin. Kyle stares right back, promising him a shallow grave. Serena hides behind Kyle, tragically convinced her original captor is now her glorious savior. Vittorio flashes a chilling smile before vanishing. Let this be a warning for your own life. Malicious people simply do not know how to forgive. They only know how to wait in the shadows to strike. The heavy doors click shut, sealing the room. Romano's chilling voice hangs in the air, summoning the ghost of Kyle's murdered father. Kyle tightens his jaw, trading the cold logic of the syndicate for a fragile domestic fantasy. The silence that follows is suffocating. Serena looks up at the exact man who engineered her ruin, her voice shaking as she asks if the nightmare is finally over. Kyle's eyes go dark. He bluntly tells her Vittorio will never stop hunting them. He pulls her against his chest, and she closes her eyes in a quiet, devastating surrender. Her natural instinct to survive has bled dry, replaced by a toxic addiction to her captor. It leaves us staring at a painful reality. The most unbreakable cages we will ever inhabit are the ones we willingly step inside. Look at this madness! Serena stares into the eyes of her captor, willingly surrendering her freedom. She mistakes a toxic trauma bond for romance, blind to the reality that the man holding her is a walking death sentence. They play at domestic bliss in a room that still reeks of gunpowder. But fate always collects its toll. The illusion shatters the second Kyle's phone vibrates against the desk. 3 of his men have just been slaughtered. His posture shifts immediately, mirroring a shark tasting blood in the water. Yet, instead of running for the hills, Serena clings to his arm, begging to ride into the carnage with him. The lesson here is brutally clear. When you ignore red warning signs for long enough, you eventually convince yourself the roaring flames burning your house keep you warm. Kyle brutally cuts her begging short, the tender lover vanishing into a cold warden. He dictates her movements with a harsh tone. Serena tearfully recites her past kidnappings, wielding her trauma like a twisted resume to prove she belongs in his violent orbit. It is a heartbreaking scene. Bloodshed has infected her mind so deeply, she is using her victimhood as a ticket to his dark reality. Kyle gently strokes her cheek, a calculated manipulation, insisting she hide within his fortress. She crumbles entirely under his touch. As Kyle and his crew vanish into the night like starving wolves, Serena is left, standing in the suffocating silence of the estate. Let us close this out with a fundamental truth, guys. If you hand the pen to someone else to write your story, they cast you as the prisoner. Bro, watch this total mental snap. Serena is escorted to her gilded cage, her brain fried by the memory of spilled blood and Vittorio's unhinged grin. She sits waiting for disaster, but the second those iron gates lock, her vibe flips. The fear of the rival cartel? Gone. Her absolute worst nightmare is losing Kyle, the boss who locked her up. Talk about a crazy plot twist. She is soaking up the toxicity, swearing that if her man goes down, she is burning the whole city to the ground. She is ready to become the exact type of ruthless hitman hunting them. The life lesson is wild but true. If you drown someone in enough trauma, they do not just break. They adapt and eventually turn into the exact monster they ran from. Look, you and I need to unpack this twisted evolution right now. What started as a trauma bond has mutated into a total sickness. Falling for a predator like Kyle has completely rewired her brain. She stares at her own hands, realizing with cold certainty that she could actually drop bodies. Standing guard by the window, she whispers a super dark promise to the empty room. If Kyle does not make it back, she is going straight out to finish the bloodbath herself. Love is not a cute feeling anymore. It is a loaded weapon with the safety off. The tragic life lesson hits hard here. Whenever we compromise our own morals just to survive a dark situation, we risk losing the brightest parts of our humanity. Out there in the driveway, it stays pitch black, and her phone is dead silent. Morning hits at 7, and she looks wrecked. Her hands shake as she stares at her screen. 16 unreturned calls. For a brain on pure trauma, that is basically 16 separate heart attacks. Right as she is about to call the morgues, tires crunch outside. Serena bolts down the stairs, but when that heavy door opens, the hype dies. 3 of Kyle's top hitmen stumble inside, bleeding like they crawled through a meat grinder, and Kyle is nowhere to be seen. She screams his name, losing it. Carlo gives her a hollow stare, whispering that the boss caught a bullet, but refused to back down until every single rival was flatlined. The life lesson here is brutal. Blind loyalty to a deeply destructive soul will only ever reward you with pure, unfiltered agony. The screen blurs as her vision tunnels out. Shock rips through her system, and she demands Carlo drive her straight to the docks. He tries to stop her, but her toxic attachment bulldozes over any basic survival instinct. This drive scene is crazy ironic. Outside the tinted windows, regular people are just sipping coffees, clueless about the Mafia war zone spilling into their streets. When they pull up, the docks look like an absolute slaughterhouse. Bodies under tarps, bullet casings shining everywhere, and right in the middle of this mess stands Kyle. Bro is covered in blood, but he is still breathing. That chaotic scene drops a huge truth bomb. Constantly chasing the toxic thrill of chaos will permanently blind you to the quiet, simple beauty of an ordinary, peaceful life. The car is still rolling when Serena kicks the door open and sprints. Kyle spins around, eyes blazing with fury. He yells at her for leaving the safe house, but she ignores it. She crashes right into his chest, completely unfazed by the fresh blood soaking his shirt and the lifeless bodies dropped nearby. Burying her face in his neck, she whispers that he promised to come back. In that 1 second, this untouchable Mafia boss crumbles. He softens up, hugging her back, and swearing the gang war is finally over. But watch her eyes closely. The camera catches a massive flash of doubt. She asks if it truly is over, and you can tell she knows the dark truth. The brutal life lesson here? You simply cannot build a peaceful future on top of a fragile foundation made of buried secrets and broken bodies. Let us take a step back, because you and I need to examine the psychological damage here. We are watching the jaws of a toxic trap snap shut. Kyle isolated her, convincing her that his blood-soaked reality is the only world left. Just look at her trembling fingers gently wiping the fresh blood off his face. It is an absolute tragedy. The broken victim is soothing the monster who dragged her into this nightmare. They hold each other in a desperate grip. While rival gang members grow cold on the pavement next to them. She actually demands they face the coming war together, making all this slaughter seem normal. The deep life lesson cuts hard. If you force yourself to tolerate the dark every single day, eventually your eyes adjust, and you forget what the light ever looked like. For 3 weeks, a heavy, suffocating quiet drops over the estate. Honestly, this is the most terrifying part of the drama. Don Vittorio drops off the radar. Inside the compound, Kyle's wounds heal into jagged scars, while Serena wanders the rose gardens like she is living out a peaceful suburban dream. But bro, her eyes give the lie away. Watch how restless she is, constantly scanning the walls. She counts the armed snipers on the roof and times the midnight deliveries, bracing for a massive explosion. She knows deep down they are just chilling in the eye of a bloody hurricane. It gives us a chilling life lesson. Whenever you choose to build your bed inside a predator's den, temporary silence never means you are safe. It just means the monster is quietly regrouping. This is the absolute tragic climax of her Sicilian. She wakes up next to him, spinning this massive lie that her only flaw is loving a dangerous mobster too much. With cold precision, she cuts off every tie to the normal world. She feeds her best friend a fabricated story, basically striking a match and burning her old life into ash. The craziest part, she shows zero regret. Even when she wakes up screaming from night terrors, the illusion holds because Kyle is right there, playing the tortured hero, stroking her hair until she calms down. But that fake bubble pops the exact second the phone shrieks across the room. It leaves us with a harsh life lesson. You can burn down every single bridge to hide from reality, but the cold, hard truth will always find a way to knock on your front door. Like a moth straight into a flame, the scent of fresh danger pulls her into the hallway. The camera frames Kyle pacing in his study, barking into the receiver. He snarls at a snake like Vittorio never offers an olive branch unless a poisoned blade is taped underneath it. Hearing that rival Don's name makes Serena's blood freeze. She steps in just as Kyle slams the phone down so hard the plastic cracks. You can see the crushing exhaustion in his shoulders. Vittorio demanded a private sit-down to negotiate a truce. Serena's gut screams that this is a fatal trap, but Kyle takes the bait, desperate for a ticket out of this nightmare. The core life lesson is undeniable. Even the most ruthless predators eventually get exhausted by the relentless, crushing burden of just trying to survive. Let us look at this piece by piece, shall we? The camera locks on Kyle, drowning in paranoia, haunted by how Serena flinches at every sound. She stands in the dim light, begging him to see how insane it is to meet a rival who wants him dead. Kyle just straightens his collar, calling it a calculated risk. Violent mobsters always think they can put a leash on a hurricane. Serena knows his logic is garbage, but her tragic devotion focuses purely on how tired he looks. Hearing the sit-down is tomorrow, she steps into his shadow and flips his own empty vows against him. Her voice drops to a cold whisper. She is not asking for permission. She is going with him. The life lesson here is simple but dark. Love anchored in constant terror is really just a beautifully decorated cage. Serena drops this ultimatum with eyes hard as flint. They ride out together, or nobody leaves. Shadows stretch across Kyle's face as his brain maps out a way to keep her alive. He caves, but his rules are absolute. She stays locked in the car, and if guns come out, she runs. Serena presses her lips against his, shutting down his frantic conditions. When he mutters that she will be the death of him, her face turns to stone, promising to flatline anyone who tries. He lets out a bitter laugh as she whispers she learned from the best. Their final kiss tastes like cold iron and a guaranteed goodbye. The scene cuts to a hollowed-out construction yard in Queens. A concrete graveyard perfectly meant to swallow bodies. The lesson here is clear. Sometimes our most fatal choices dress up as unshakable loyalty. The camera locks onto Serena in the sedan, her pulse hammering against her ribs. They pull up with 12 guards, proving Kyle is terrified. Vittorio's black trucks sit in a half circle, choking off the yard. Kyle leaves her, locked behind the glass with Carlo, and steps into the freezing night. Through the window, Serena watches a silent movie play out. Vittorio steps from the shadows, wearing the darkness like a king. The tension is suffocating. Cut off from sound, Serena reads the tragedy in their posture. Kyle is rigid like a cornered animal, while Vittorio flexes the casual grace of a predator. Serena begs Carlo to see the snare tightening around them, but the guard just recites empty mob oaths. It delivers a harsh life truth. Blind faith inside a burning house will only ever turn you to ash. Guys, picture this. A sniper rifle catches the moonlight. Serena completely loses her mind. She screams, wrestling the guard to reach the door. But it is too late. A sharp crack echoes, and Kyle folds into the dirt like a cheap lawn chair. You and I both know how trauma hits everything slows to an agonizing crawl. The yard lights up with muzzle flashes. Carlo drags her behind a tire, the air smelling straight up like sulfur and bad choices. She fights him, totally desperate to reach her guy. The second the guard slips, she books it into a hail of bullets, dropping beside Kyle as his shirt turns dark red. Listen, here is the real life lesson. When you are truly desperate, you will sprint into the exact fire that is trying to end you. The camera zooms into Kyle looking pale as a ghost. His eyes lock onto hers, bugging out with panic. He chokes on his own breath, literally begging her to run. But Serena is not having it. She violently refuses, gripping his jacket. A soldier grabs Kyle and yanks him behind a pillar, right as bullets chew up the spot they left. Kyle starts coughing hard, spitting bright red onto the pavement. A punctured lung, guys. Serena presses her shaking hands flat against his wound, screaming at him to stay awake. He forces out a broken apology, realizing his ego caused this mess. She weaponizes her fury, straight up forbidding him to die. Vittorio trapped them perfectly. The life lesson here is brutal. Unchecked pride is the heaviest anchor you can carry, and it drags everyone down. Vittorio used their wish for peace as bait for this trap. A soldier yells to move the boss, but Serena spots the horrifying truth. Kyle's lips are turning blue. Moving him now will flat out stop his failing heart. Her crazy devotion takes the wheel. She raises her blood-stained hands and walks straight out from cover. Total plot twist. The shock of her surrendering makes the shooting stop. Vittorio struts forward, soaking up his villain moment. But Serena does not flinch. She drops a massive bargain, her life in exchange for his. Vittorio laughs, mocking her. But she knows how to break him. She coldly points out that killing Kyle will spark a massive Mafia war, burning his legacy. Here is a harsh life lesson. True sacrifice always demands the absolute highest price. Serena lays it out with zero hesitation. Let Kyle breathe, blame the shootout on enemies, and keep your throne, taking my life as payment. Vittorio is confused why she would trade her soul for a monster. Her silence is the hollow stare of someone totally broken. Vittorio smirks, loving the idea of Kyle waking up next to her body. He points the barrel right at her chest. Serena closes her eyes, ready to check out. A massive bang shatters the night. But wait, there is no pain. She opens her eyes to the craziest Uno reverse card ever. Vittorio is staring down at a giant hole in his own chest. His brain cannot process the fail before he faceplants into the dirt. Remember this simple life lesson. The most dangerous thing in any room is never the loaded gun. It is the unpredictable human heart. The camera slowly pans to Marco, standing over his father's wrecked body. The gun is literally still smoking in his hand, but his face is completely blank. Talk about daddy issues, right? Marco saw the massive flaw in the family business. His dad's huge ego was ruining their cash flow. With one trigger pull, the son brutally snatches the crown. He speaks up, reinstating the truce and canceling his dad's messy war before it kicks off. The mob soldiers around him, these hardcore tough guys, are completely frozen by this icy new boss. It is a straight-up masterclass in psychological dominance. This scene drops a super grim life lesson. In the darkest corners of the world, loyalty is never about family or love. It is forged entirely by the desperate need to simply survive another day. Watch how they frame this next part. Marco literally steps over his dad's body without scuffing his shoes. It is top-tier emotional damage. He waves his hand, telling his goons to drag Kyle to an underground doctor, tossing out the family beef like trash. We cut back to the back seat of the getaway car. Serena is holding the heavy head of the exact guy who ruined her life. Her tears mix with the blood on his collar. The panicked whispers between them expose how toxic their relationship is. She is saving her own worst enemy, totally terrified of losing him. It leaves us with a mind-blowing life lesson. Deep trauma has a terrifying way of messing with your head. It makes a person feel the crushing weight of heavy chains and somehow mistake them for a warm hug. The blinding lights hit hard as nurses literally pry Serena's bloody hands off the stretcher. She is left shivering in the aftermath of his mess. The next few hours are pure Mafia insanity. The underworld straight up turns a boring waiting room into a villain headquarters. Marco sends in slick lawyers to draft treaties while surgeons saw open Kyle's chest. When the staff tries to kick them out, scary enforcers stuff thick envelopes of cash into their pockets. The bribery is as smooth as it is disgusting. By the time the doctor says Kyle will make it, Serena is a hollow shell vibrating with shock. This teaches an ugly life lesson. When money buys everything, your raw human grief gets zero respect. It is just an annoyance that a stack of cash can easily erase. The scene cuts to the intensive care unit. Stripped of his guns, Kyle is hooked up to tubes, looking super fragile. Serena's obsession is front and center. She hovers over him, whispering furiously about packing up and living a normal life. It is an absolutely delusional dream. 3 whole days pass before the boss finally opens his eyes. Stick with me here, because this is where the drama peaks. Serena totally breaks down. She cries into his bedsheets, pouring out how terrified she was. And Kyle's reaction? A perfectly rehearsed smile and a smooth apology. We really need to remember this terrible life lesson. The worst monsters do not look scary when they are bleeding in a hospital bed. They look pitiful, and that fake fragility is exactly why their victims can never just walk away. As the meds wear off, that icy glare returns to Kyle's eyes. Hearing Marco smoked his own dad, the boss does not blink. His savage Mafia mindset is untouched. Next to him, Serena is drowning in PTSD. This is where Kyle drops a masterclass in toxic manipulation. Playing the victim, he fakes a massive change of heart. He blames the bloodshed on his dead father and promises to leave the crime life for her. You and I are going to unpack this and see the reality. The guy has not changed. Real redemption takes a lifetime of hard work, not just surviving a gunshot. He feeds her this fairy tale, because she is desperate. Let me give you a quick life lesson. A wolf never actually loses its appetite. It just learns how to cry like a lost puppy until you finally open the front door. Let us freeze the frame right here. We are watching straight-up psychological kidnapping. Kyle is not just offering a shiny ring. He is literally welding the iron bars of her cage shut and making Serena thank him for it. He spins his violent past like he was some noble hero making sacrifices. Her exhausted brain, totally wrecked by the trauma he caused, just eats up the lie. He takes the darkest part of their story, the fact that dating him almost got her killed, and twists it into the exact reason they must stay together forever. It is a gorgeously evil setup. This right here is a massive life lesson for all of us. When the guy who ruined your life hands you the keys to your cell, you are not free. It just means he successfully moved the heavy padlock deep inside your own head. The camera pushes in, catching the absolute peak of her blind loyalty. Serena is bawling happy tears, pulling the guy who ruined her life into a desperate kiss. All around them, hospital monitors are beeping. It is a glaring alarm about the street violence that put her in this nightmare anyway. Yet, there they are, whispering and sweet, nothings about massive diamonds bought with straight-up dirty money. They are completely lost in the hype that they can scrub the Mafia stench off their skin. But guys, you cannot casually walk away from a mountain of shallow graves. It brings us to a brutally honest life lesson. Any piece you try to duct tape over massive, unhealed trauma is never going to last. It is just a temporary pause, holding its breath until your dark past kicks down the front door. Let us step back and look at this train wreck. You and I both know apex predators do not just wake up and decide to be soft. But here is Serena, surviving an actual mob war, only to get wiped out by her own romantic delusions. Kyle struts out of that hospital, and honestly, the vibe flips for a minute. He starts outsourcing his syndicate hits, dropping the paranoia that kept him alive. Next thing we know, he drops a massive diamond on her finger. Serena actually buys into the fantasy that her pure love fixed a literal mafia boss. It is such a massive trap. The lesson here is brutal. We desperately want to believe our love can heal a ruined person, but we end up completely blind to the trail of shattered lives they always leave behind. Picture this insane wedding scene. We have 50 guys in tailored suits chilling in a sunny garden, and every single one of them is an elite hitman trying really hard not to shoot the groom. Even Marco, his biggest rival, sends over some fancy wine just to fake nice. Serena walks down the aisle looking stunning and stark white, even though she was literally just crying about how fake this whole setup feels. But Kyle completely shuts down her guilt. To this guy, she is the ultimate prize. They swap vows in a gorgeous rose garden that is 100% planted over shallow graves. When he kisses her, it is like he swallows her soul. The lesson here is chilling. Slapping a fancy white dress on a living nightmare does not make it a fairy tale. It just makes you ignore the bloody dirt shifting right under your feet. The reception is completely wild, guys. Imagine high society snobs mingling with literal mob bosses, while armed guards hold assault rifles next to chocolate fountains. As the music slows down, Kyle pulls Serena into the garden, grabs her shaking hands, and actually asks if she is happy. Her answer totally wrecks the vibe. She whispers that she is absolutely terrified. That is the crazy reality of chronic trauma. When your brain is wired to dodge bullets every day, a quiet room just feels like a trap. Kyle promises he will keep her safe, totally drunk on his own massive ego and God complex. But we all know fate is coming to collect the check. It leaves us with a seriously brutal lesson. Those dark monsters we think we finally outran almost never stay buried forever. Sooner or later, the past always comes knocking. Seriously, look at this guy's eyes right now. Kyle is staring at her like a total psychopath, not even blinking. He whispers that everything outside their garden is just static. Let me tell you, when a truly unhinged guy locks onto his obsession, he will do anything to keep it. He actually swears he is done with the street life. When Serena nervously brings up the dozens of enemies they have, the dude does not even flinch. Being the syndicate king means zero to him now. He just wants to play king of this tiny, fake bubble. Serena leans right into him, completely falling for his crazy confidence. It looks super romantic on the surface, but the lesson here cuts deep. You can change your priorities all you want and pretend you are brand new, but a violent past is a relentless shadow that never actually stops hunting you down. 6 whole months go by without a single gunshot. Serena is literally out there in the dirt, planting pretty little flowers right over the spots where bodies are buried. This massive mob compound has basically become her own personal velvet-lined prison. And shockingly, Kyle is actually keeping his word. He is sleeping like a baby while his top enforcer, Carlo, goes out to break kneecaps and collect the cash. Kyle looks at Serena like she is some kind of magical angel who magically fixed his soul. Even the rival boss, Marco, realizes that making easy money is better than a turf war, so he sends Serena a rare book just for chilling Kyle out. They are playing house in a graveyard. The lesson is super clear here. You can plant the most gorgeous flowers you want, but they will absolutely rot when their roots are drinking from poisoned dirt. Let us open this next chapter together and watch everything slowly fall apart. Rival bosses are poking at Kyle's territory, testing his limits. But instead of getting his hands dirty, he just sends his muscle to do it, which honestly makes the hits even more ruthless. Meanwhile, Serena is just casually squeezing past dudes with huge assault rifles on her way to get a morning coffee, calling this absolute madness true love. One night, she notices the stress finally getting to him. She asks if the gang life is pulling him back, and he totally plays the perfect, sensitive husband. He swears Carlo will handle the dirty work, feeding her this wild lie that they have no secrets. The lesson here is pretty terrifying. It is way too easy to mistake a locked cage for a safe haven, just because the guy holding the keys keeps whispering that you are protected. Now we see her, sitting at his massive desk, giving him a shoulder massage like they are a normal suburban couple. He grabs her hands, playing the totally worn-out husband routine. She looks at this literal killer and somehow sees a poor little wounded bird. That trauma bond is locked in tight. Then, she drops the massive plot twist: she is pregnant. Kyle absolutely freezes. That icy Mafia face breaks into pure shock, and then turns into this creepy, possessive grin. She whispers his own promise back to him about having no secrets, and he shuts her up with a crazy kiss. But he is not just kissing the woman he loves. He is looking at a brand new trophy for his ego. The lesson here is rough. The worst lies are the ones we tell ourselves, actually believing that bringing a kid into a toxic disaster zone will magically fix all the broken pieces. He grabs her face, looking so desperate, and asks if she is happy about the baby. Serena starts crying and actually admits how scared she is. She lists off the absolute nightmare they live in, the constant threats, the rival gangs, and how incredibly selfish it is to raise a kid in a literal mob compound. But her brain is so fried by this guy that she says yes anyway. Kyle just smirks with total arrogance. He straight up admits their kid will grow up dodging snipers, but he twists it like it is some kind of flex. He sells her on the idea that their prison walls are just VIP security. They hug, but they are literally standing on a landmine. The lesson is undeniable. Love cannot stop a flying bullet. When you romanticize your own hostage situation, you are just signing your kid up to serve time in the exact same cell. Just look at this guy drowning in the mess he created. Kyle is losing his mind with paranoia, running around the compound getting ready for a war that has not even started yet. But Serena actually steps up and hits the brakes on his freak-out. She grabs him, shaking him out of it, and begs him to just let them have a normal life. Seeing a ruthless mob boss swallow his panic and just nod is a crazy thing to witness. Boom, we skip forward 3 whole years. Their little girl, Elena, is running around the sunny garden, totally clueless about her dad's bloody history. It brings up a really solid lesson. Your past does not automatically have to dictate your future. Sometimes, just stubbornly deciding to focus on the good stuff. Right in front of you is the only real way those toxic cycles for the next generation. The whole setup here is wild, placing little Elena in this perfect fake bubble. This kid has zero clue that her fun backyard is literally surrounded by snipers and electric fences. Kyle watches her play in the dirt, stressing out like a normal dad about her ruining her cute dress. Serena just laughs it off, saying the mud will wash out, but she is only going to be little once. But what we are really seeing is some next-level denial. They are playfully arguing about bath time, acting out this perfect family script. Serena completely ignores the crazy fact that her quiet suburban life was bought with dirty money and actual violence. It leaves us with a seriously great lesson. The human brain is totally terrifying. It will get used to the most twisted moral nightmares, as long as it gets to feel completely safe at the end of the day. Hold up. Let me pause this right here. You and I really need to unpack this fake happy ending. Kyle is going full dad mode, spinning Elena around while she laughs her head off. He is making lame jokes about hurting his back, and Serena is playfully teasing him about getting old. It is honestly super cute on the surface, but if you look closely at Serena, you can tell she is quietly doing the math on all the lives it cost to get here. She is trying so hard to convince herself that all the past violence was just the cover charge for this one nice day. The crazy part is that trauma never actually leaves your body. You just slap some happy family stickers over it and pretend it is gone. The lesson here is tough but real. People will gladly march right through absolute hell if they think it will buy a safe space for the ones they love. Watch how hard they work to keep up this fake normal life. The maid calls out that dinner is ready, making it all feel super cozy. They only let extreme loyalists inside the gates now, which is basically just a curated quarantine, so they do not lose their minds from the stress. For a few hours, they get to pretend they are just a regular family. But then it cuts to the middle of the night. Serena wakes up and catches Kyle standing in the pitch black, just staring out the window. They are supposed to be completely untouchable now, but this former boss is still checking the trees for assassins. It is an absolute gut punch to watch. You never really clock out of the underworld. It gives us one last hard lesson. True peace is not just about avoiding gunfire. It is a super fragile house you have to rebuild from scratch every single morning. This next scene flips the entire script. Serena softly asks what he is thinking about in the dark. Kyle gives this genuine smile a super rare crack in his armor and admits he is just thinking about how lucky he is. He tells her his life would be empty if she had not called him out back then, completely writing off his father's empire. His family is worth way more than some blood-stained throne. Think about the heavy weight of that for a second. A guy raised to be a ruthless mob boss is entirely rewired his own brutal nature for love. It is wild knowing how much violence it costs to earn this soft moment. The lesson is clear. No matter how much damage you carry, or how dark your history gets, the human heart never fully loses its capacity for real connection. You and I need to unpack the most twisted part of this story. Serena is completely done playing the helpless damsel. What started as a scary hostage situation morphed into something way more dangerous. She is no longer his weak spot, she is his absolute equal. She finally gets that in their brutal reality. Love is not some soft feeling. It is a loaded weapon. The second you care about someone, your old moral boundaries evaporate. You will gladly cause pure chaos to keep your family safe. When she leans in to kiss him, it hits hard. She has fully embraced her own dark side. Here is the harsh truth we have to swallow. True resilience is rarely about keeping your hands clean. Sometimes, to survive the real monsters out there, you just have to learn how to see perfectly in the dark. As the camera pulls back for the final shot, we look down at the courtyard. You can see that historic rose garden blooming against all odds. Planted by a mob matriarch before Serena was even born, it is the ultimate metaphor. Those flowers survive brutal winters, growing in soil bought with decades of blood money. Yet, the roots hold tight, and the petals keep opening. It perfectly mirrors how Kyle and Serena turned a terrifying trauma bond into a rock-solid partnership. They fought the entire world and their own worst demons just to earn this quiet life. It leaves us with one stubborn truth to walk away with. No matter how poisoned the ground is, or how toxic the environment gets around you, genuine human connection will always find a way to take root.
The deepest lesson from Serina's tactile story is about self-worth. Throughout the story, people question whether Serena is worth the chaos Kyle creates. Don Vittorio sees her as a nobody, a worker who should never have mattered more than a political marriage. Kyle's capos also doubt her value, asking whether one girl is worth risking and possibly starting a war. Even Serena herself begins to wonder whether she is worth the blood, danger, and destruction surrounding her. This question is emotionally powerful, but also dangerous. A person's worth should never depend on whether a powerful man chooses them, fights for them, or burns the world for them. Serena is valuable before Kyle notices her. She is brave, intelligent, hardworking, and morally aware. Here, she has a voice, a mind, and a life of her own. Kyle's love may make her feel seen, but it should not become the source of her identity. This is a key educational lesson, especially for viewers drawn to dramatic romance. Being chosen by someone powerful can feel validating, but true self-worth must come from within.
If Serena believes she matters only because Kyle would go to war for her, then
she risks losing herself inside his world.
The healthier lesson is that Serena matters because she is human,
because she has dignity, and because she deserves respect regardless of Kyle's feelings. At the same time, Kyle's willingness to challenge his world for her reveals another lesson. Love can push people to question inherited duties and harmful traditions, but love should not reduce someone to a prize in a battle between men. Serena's future strength will depend on remembering that she is not merely Kyle Moretti's weakness or possession. She must remain Serena Val, a woman with her own choices, courage, and moral center.